You're at a buffet. The food keeps coming, plate after plate of exotic dishes prepared by master chefs. You eat continuously for hours, barely pausing between bites. It feels amazing, but there's a problem. You never actually digest any of it. Your stomach is continuously full, but you're getting no real nourishment. This is exactly how the German philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer viewed excessive reading. And in his famous essay on the subject, he made a controversial claim that still rattles the intellectual world today. For people with high intelligence, too much reading can actually make you dumber. Now, before you get it wrong, Schopenhauer wasn't against reading. He was against mindless consumption of ideas, and his arguments, written over 150 years ago, might be more relevant than ever in our age of information overload. Today, we're diving deep into 5 key quotes from Schopenhauer's essay to understand why he believed that your own original thinking is infinitely more valuable than filling your head with other people's thoughts. 1. Reading as mental outsourcing. Schopenhauer in his essay wrote, "When we read, another person thinks for us. We merely repeat his mental process." Think about what happens when you read. You're literally following someone else's train of thought, station by station, exactly as they laid out the tracks. Their conclusions become your conclusions. Their logic becomes your logic. You're essentially renting someone else's brain instead of using your own. It's like using GPS navigation every single day. Sure, you get where you need to go, but ask yourself, do you actually know the route? If your GPS suddenly stopped working, could you navigate on your own? Probably not. You've outsourced the mental work of spatial reasoning to a device. Schopenhauer sees reading the same way. When you consume idea after idea from books, you're outsourcing the hard work of thinking. The person with high intelligence who reads constantly without thinking independently is like a bodybuilder who only does assisted exercises. Sure, they're going through the motions, but they're not building real strength. 2. The atrophy of thought. Thus, if a man spends almost the whole day in reading, he gradually loses the capacity for thinking. This is the atrophy principle. Use it or lose it. Schopenhauer observed that when reading becomes your primary mental activity, your ability to generate original thoughts literally deteriorates. Imagine you're a musician with incredible natural talent, but instead of practicing your instrument, you spend all day listening to other people's music. You're still engaged with music, right? You're learning, you're exposing yourself to different styles. But here's the question. Are you getting any better at playing? Of course not. Schopenhauer argued in his essay that the same principle applies to thinking. Reading about ideas is passive consumption. Thinking is active creation. If you spend your entire day absorbing other people's ideas, when exactly do you practice forming your own? Can you think of what it's like having a Ferrari and only using it to drive to the mailbox? This is how it feels on your IQ. You're of this incredible cognitive engine, but you've trained yourself to be a passenger rather than a driver. Over time, you might forget you even have the ability to think independently. You become a walking encyclopedia, full of information but incapable of generating wisdom. 3. The tyranny of bad timing. Reading forces thoughts upon the mind which are as foreign to its mood and direction at the moment of their entrance as the seal is to the wax upon which it stamps its imprint. This is about the violence of imposed thinking. When you read, you don't get to choose what ideas come to you or when. The author controls the sequence, the timing, the emphasis. You're forced to think about their concerns in their order, regardless of what your mind is naturally inclined toward at that moment. Imagine you're a jazz musician in the middle of an improvisation, and suddenly someone hands you sheet music for a completely different song and demands you play it immediately. Your creative flow is destroyed as a result. Schopenhauer observed in his essay that your mind, at any given moment, has its own natural direction, questions it's puzzling over, connections it's starting to make. When reading interrupts this process, it's like changing the channel mid-scene. You lose the thread of your own thinking. 4. Intellectual poison. Now Schopenhauer really throws down the gauntlet. From his essay, "Bad books are intellectual poison. They destroy the mind." This isn't hyperbole. Schopenhauer genuinely believed that reading bad books causes real damage. But what makes a book bad, in his view? It's not just poorly written books. It's any book that fills your mind with shallow, confused, or false ideas. Think of your mind as having a limited amount of storage space. Not for information, but for the frameworks and patterns through which you understand the world. When you read a bad book, you're installing corrupted software. These faulty ideas take up residence in your mental architecture, and they interfere with your ability to think clearly about everything. It's like learning to play piano but starting with a teacher who teaches you terrible technique. Yes, you're learning something, but you're actually getting worse. You're building bad habits that will take years to undo. You'd have been better off not learning at all and preserving your natural instincts. In our current age of content overload, blogs, Twitter threads, self-help books, viral articles, this warning from Schopenhauer's essay feels prophetic. We're drowning in bad books, broadly defined. Every click is potentially intellectual poison. 5. The proper use of reading. Finally, Schopenhauer offers guidance from his essay. We should only read when the source of our own thoughts runs dry. This is the key. Reading isn't evil, it's medicine. And like medicine, timing and dosage matter. You read to restart your thinking, not to replace it. Imagine you're digging a well. You dig, and eventually you hit water. Your own fresh spring of ideas. But if you immediately stop digging and start pumping in water from someone else's well, you'll never know how deep your own source goes or what unique minerals it contains. According to Schopenhauer, reading should be a last resort. You think first. You wrestle with problems. You develop hypotheses. You explore ideas as far as your own mind can take them. Only when you genuinely hit a wall, when your thinking truly runs dry, do you turn to books for new input. This approach transforms reading from passive consumption to active dialogue. You're not absorbing ideas, you're testing them against your own. You're not following someone else's path, you're consulting their map while on your own journey. Conclusion. So what's the takeaway from Schopenhauer's essay? Is he saying you should never read? Of course not. He was himself a voracious reader. His point is about hierarchy. Thinking must come first, and reading must serve thinking, never replace it. In our world of infinite content, Schopenhauer's warnings feel more urgent than ever. We're all at that buffet now, gorging ourselves on ideas without digesting any of them. We mistake the consumption of information for the cultivation of wisdom. The challenge, then, is this. Can you bear to be alone with your own thoughts? Can you resist the urge to immediately fill every question with someone else's answer? Can you sit with uncertainty long enough for your own insights to emerge? As Schopenhauer understood and articulated in his essay, the greatest ideas don't come from reading more books. They come from thinking more deeply. And for that, you need silence. You need space. You need to close the book and open your mind.